Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
They wanted to humiliate me publicly. What they didn't count on was what I could do with 30 minutes and a working phone. My name's Daryl Whitman, and 5 years ago, I thought marrying into the Morgan family meant I'd finally made it. Last week, I flew to Rome for my father-in-law's 75th birthday, an entire week of luxury events that I had personally organized down to the last detail. Vineyard lunches, yacht rides, private Vatican tours, every reservation, every floral arrangement, every stupid monogrammed napkin came through my contacts and my time. I should have seen the setup coming, but I didn't. Not until the final dinner. It was a rooftop place near the Colosseum, one of those rare spots where the skyline does half the talking. The table was long, white linens and gold-rimmed plates, twinkling candles catching the last of the Roman sunset. 12 seats, but not 13. I stood there, stunned, as the family filtered in. Cassidy's brothers, her parents, the cousins, even one of Charles's business partners. They smiled and clinked glasses like it was a royal banquet. "Oops," Cassidy said, barely glancing up. "Guess we miscounted." Then came the chuckles, little snorts from her mom, a shrug from her brother Ryan. Someone even said, "Guess Daryl's standing, huh?" They sat. I stood. There wasn't a single spare chair. Not one staff member acknowledged it. I looked around for someone, anyone, to fix it. Nothing. Cassidy swirled her wine. "You're okay, right, babe?" she asked, not really asking. "We'll scoot in." I looked her dead in the eyes. "Don't bother." Then I turned around and walked out. I didn't run, I didn't yell, I didn't throw a fit. Just walked straight down the elevator, out the front door, and into the warm Roman night. And then I pulled out my phone. 30 minutes. That's all it took. I canceled everything. The final dinner, the yacht charter for the next day, the villa in Amalfi, the sunset helicopter ride that was supposed to be Charles' big birthday surprise. Every luxury vendor I'd worked with. Gone. Because what they didn't know was this. I was the one who'd put the entire week on my company's credit line. Not them. Not Charles. Not Cassidy. Me. Whitman Logistics had an event budget line, and we often handled high-end planning for our partners and clients. I'd made the arrangements through that channel, with proper cancellation clauses, of course. So when I made the calls, no one argued. They knew my name, they knew my account, they knew who had the power. I remember the last call I made that night. Paolo, the restaurant manager. "Pull the plug," I told him calmly. "Mid-dinner?" he asked, shocked. "Exactly mid-dinner. Let them finish their first course, then stop everything." There was a pause. Then Paolo said, "Understood, Mr. Whitman." I leaned against the cafe wall across the street, sipping an espresso, watching the candle-lit table up on the roof. They were laughing, drinking, celebrating. They thought they'd erased me with a missing chair. They forgot who booked the damn table in the first place. After I shut down the dinner, I didn't sleep much that night. Sat in the hotel room with the curtains wide open, Rome glowing outside like it didn't give a damn what just happened. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, asking myself the same question over and over. How the hell did I let it get this far? It wasn't just about the chair, it was about every little thing that led up to it. And if I was honest, it started the night I met Cassidy. Boston Business Awards. One of those stiff ballroom events where the drinks are weak and the smiles are fake. I was being recognized for regional supply chain innovation, which sounds way sexier than it is. Cassidy floated over in a dark green dress that matched her eyes, complimented my speech, laughed at my joke about truck routes, and that was it. I was done for. She was smart, smooth, had this way of making you feel like you mattered, like you were the only one in the room. And she picked me. Me. The guy who still wrote invoices by hand when the software glitched, who didn't own a single blazer that wasn't off the rack at Kohl's. Cassidy introduced me to her world like it was some exclusive club. I met her parents 3 months in. Charles Morgan and his wife Diane. Morgan & Tate was one of those investment firms that made their real money by managing other people's money. Quiet power, long money. The kind that lives in Beacon Hill brownstones, with original crown molding, and a butler's pantry. At first they were polite. A little too polite. Charles always gave me a handshake with one hand. Like I was someone interviewing for a job he'd already decided not to hire. Diane smiled with tight lips and once asked me at brunch whether my company was regional or just small. I told her we were privately held with selective operations, which was code for not your kind of big, but profitable enough. Still, I brushed it off. I loved Cassidy, and she said she loved me. We got married at her family's summer place on Nantucket. Everything white and pastel and painfully perfect. I remember feeling like a +1 at my own wedding, shaking hands with Cassidy's godparents who looked at me like I was the caterer. But Cassidy squeezed my hand during the vows, and I held on to that. What I didn't realize then, couldn't let myself see, was that marrying into her family wasn't joining them. It was more like onboarding. There were expectations, unspoken things. Cassidy once asked me not to wear my boots to a family lunch because they clashed with the table setting. Diane mailed me cufflinks for Christmas one year and included a note that said, "So you can finally blend in at Morgan events." Even my own success became something they treated like a fluke. Charles would call my freight contracts blue-collar miracles, like I had stumbled into them by accident. And if I tried to talk shop around him, he'd steer the conversation back to finance or politics, something serious. Still, I kept trying, kept showing up, kept believing that if I worked hard enough, if I proved myself, I'd earn my place at the table. What I didn't realize until Rome was that I was never meant to stay at the table. I was a placeholder, a reliable tool, useful while they needed the help, the business contacts, the planning, the image. They had a plan, a quiet, elegant exit strategy, and I walked right into it, like a damn idiot in a tailored suit thinking I belonged. The Rome trip was supposed to be the peak, a crown jewel moment for Charles Morgan, and maybe, quietly, for me too. I'd put in the work, the hours, the sweat, built this entire week from the ground up, the same way I built my business. With logistics, timing, relationships, and pure force of will, it was going to be unforgettable. Vineyard lunch in Frascati with a sommelier I knew from a past shipment. Private Vatican tour with a former client's cousin who happened to be a bishop. 3 nights in Amalfi, where the villa had an infinity pool overlooking the coast, and a chef who once cooked for a damn prime minister. And the finale, the rooftop dinner overlooking the Colosseum, 7 courses, live string quartet, the whole thing lit like a dream. And none of it was cheap. But when you plan high-end events like this, you don't wait for checks. You move. I used Whitman Logistics' event budget line, the same one we use for client conferences and European supply meets. It was all above board, legal, insured, and temporary. That's the key word here. Temporary. Everything was supposed to be reimbursed after the fact. Charles was worth a fortune on paper, and Cassidy swore the family trust was just liquidity delayed. But a week before the flight, things started to smell off. First, one of the drivers in Milan emailed me saying the deposit on the town cars had failed. I assumed it was a one-off. Called the bank, told them to retry it. Then, 2 days later, a sommelier from the vineyard texted me directly, asking why the wine tasting fee still hadn't cleared. That one hit a nerve. I asked Cassidy about it that night while we were packing. She didn't even look up from folding her dresses. "It's nothing," she said. "Dad's got half his accounts overseas. Stuff gets slow. It's all timing delays." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to so bad. But later that night, after she went to bed, I saw Charles's iPad left on the coffee table. It had his Bloomberg app open, like always. But this time it wasn't stocks or markets. It was a personal finance tab. And right there, in plain English, property after property with second and third mortgages, business lines of credit that were tapped. One account had a red balance. I clicked into the Documents folder and saw a spreadsheet titled M&T Liquidity Strategy, Emergency Edition. I didn't open it. I just stared at it for a full minute, something cold settling behind my ribs. They were broke. Not poor, not struggling, broke. And I was the one holding the bag. Still, I didn't say anything. I told myself to ride it out, just get through the week. Let the old man have his birthday. I figured we'd talk once we were home, maybe work something out. Maybe Charles would agree to back the expenses formally through Morgan and Tate. But deep down, a part of me already knew. The seat being missing wasn't the start of the betrayal. It was the final move. The real game had started long before the plane ever took off. While I was coordinating menus and matching wine pairings, They were quietly setting the stage to cut me out. Financially, emotionally, maybe even legally. And I was too damn loyal to see it coming. I thought I'd just stumbled into a rough patch in their finances. Turns out I was walking straight into a trap, and they planned to let me take the fall. It was the third morning in Rome when everything snapped into focus. Cassidy said she was heading to the spa for a massage. I was still in bed, half awake, trying to push through the ache in my shoulders from a week of nonstop planning. She left in a hurry, robe flapping, sunglasses on like she was hiding from the damn paparazzi. I got up to grab a charger and noticed her laptop open on the desk. That wasn't unusual. Cassidy was careless with tech, always leaving tabs open, windows minimized, never really thinking twice about privacy because she assumed I'd never go snooping. She was mostly right. I didn't go looking for trouble, but trouble was sitting right there in bold black text on a PDF icon labeled D. Whitman Divorce Talking Points. I didn't move for a full minute, just stared, thought maybe it was something old or something from a friend, until I double-clicked and the file opened with my name right at the top. Cassidy will lead with calmness and grace. Frame the separation as mutual, with an emphasis on respect and personal growth. Reinforce that the marriage was meaningful, but that paths have naturally diverged. There were bullet points, quotes, timing cues. One line read, propose the toast around dessert, soften with nostalgia, then shift to the next chapter narrative. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. They were going to use Charles's birthday, my event, as the stage for her to perform some perfectly polished exit speech, and I was supposed to sit there like a neutered idiot, nodding along while they clinked glasses and smiled for photos. I scrolled down. There was an email attached, from her father. This approach keeps everything professional and minimizes drama. We support you completely. Then another one from the family lawyer. Statement is clean. Suggest having Charles introduce the topic to control the energy? Control the energy. I clicked into the mail app and checked the sent folder. Cassidy had been forwarding drafts to her attorney, her mother, even Preston. Preston, the college ex. The one who suddenly just happened to be in Rome the same week as this family celebration. I thought it was strange, but she swore it was coincidence. He's here for a hedge fund summit, she said, like I gave a damn. Their message thread was still open. Preston. Everything's in motion. Cassidy. Let's just get through the dinner. Preston. You'll be free soon. Once the trip's done and the papers are filed? Cassidy. I can't wait. That last one, I stared at it for a long time. Not will be free. I'll be free. Like I was some obligation she couldn't wait to shake off. I didn't yell, didn't throw her laptop, didn't even cry. I just started documenting. Took photos of every file, every email, every message. Synced them to my phone, my cloud account, my business drive. Printed 2 hard copies on the Hotel Business Center printer and mailed one to my attorney with a note. Keep this sealed unless I say otherwise. When Cassidy came back 30 minutes later, glowing and relaxed, I was on the terrace, sipping an espresso like nothing had changed. She kissed my cheek and said, "How's the view?" "Couldn't be better," I said. Because at that point it was crystal clear. They weren't just kicking me out of the marriage. They were staging a show. One where I quietly disappeared mid-toast while Cassidy delivered her soft-focused TED Talk on reinvention. They thought I'd sit there and swallow it, smile for the cameras, shake hands, slide off into the shadows like a good placeholder. But no, I wasn't leaving. Not yet. There was still one final event on the schedule, and it was going to be mine. The funny thing is, I still smiled through most of that day, shook hands with the sommelier, sent polite reminders to the yacht crew, double-checked with the string quartet about the rooftop acoustics. You'd never know I was the man they were about to cut loose. Hell, I even helped Charles pick a tie that felt celebratory but not too showy. It was muscle memory at that point, being useful. I'd done it so long I could almost forget the knife twisting in my back. Almost. That night, just after 10, I headed down to the lobby bar for a drink. Thought I'd give myself 15 minutes before heading up to the room to prep for the final day. But as I turned the corner near the concierge desk, I heard her voice, Cassidy's mom, that cloying, practiced tone she used when pretending to be gracious. Again, 12 seats only. Mr. Whitman won't be staying for dinner. It's a family matter. The concierge murmured something in return, probably confused why the guest who had arranged the reservation wasn't invited. I didn't move, didn't breathe. 12 seats, not 13. That wasn't a slip-up. That was confirmation. They didn't forget me. They removed me. I walked back to the elevator in a fog, only half aware of the music piping through the lobby speakers. Inside the room, I sat down at the desk like a man about to write a will. Except I wasn't planning for death. I was planning a burial. I opened my laptop, pulled out the black binder I always travel with, my emergency playbook, vendor contacts, reservation codes, contract details. Everything I'd spent weeks building all right there in neat printed rows. This wasn't my first time dealing with chaos. I ran a logistics firm after all. But this was the first time I'd used those skills not to save an operation, but to collapse it. I poured a glass of scotch, let it sit there untouched. Then I got to work. Yacht charter canceled. The operator owed me a favor after I got his nephew a warehouse internship last summer. One call, and it was done. The Amalfi Villa, reversed. I had booked it through a friend's luxury agency. Told them I needed the space later in the summer, full refund, no questions asked. Catering? I emailed the chef directly. Told him the family had food allergies that were not disclosed, and I didn't feel comfortable proceeding. He thanked me for the heads up and refunded the deposit. Decor team? I used the kill code. That's not a joke. I actually build kill codes into all our outsourced vendor agreements. Just a series of phrases or cancellation tokens that signal immediate stop, no contact, no questions. It protects us from emergencies. That night, I used every single one of them. I took back every euro I'd laid out, every dollar I'd fronted, every luxury they thought was theirs by birthright. Gone. And then I opened the reservation for the rooftop dinner. It was under Whitman Logistics Europe, not Cassidy, not Morgan and Tate, not even her father. Me. Booked under our Rome partner affiliate, paid on our event card. Even the tax receipt listed corporate hospitality, D. Whitman. I clicked through to the reservation management portal and saw the name Paolo listed under contacts. The manager I'd worked with for months. He liked me, trusted me, called me Signor Whitman like I was some mogul. I wrote him a message, short and direct. Paolo, thank you again for everything. Please prepare the bill for the full amount still owed. If unpaid within 30 minutes of seating, pause service and await further instruction. No charges go to the Morgan party. Regards, D. Whitman. I hit send, sat back. Took a long, slow sip of scotch. My phone buzzed. A reminder I'd set a few days ago. Final dinner. Arrive at 7:20 sharp. Smile. Be proud. I stared at it and laughed under my breath. Smile? Sure. But not for the reason I planned. Because they thought I'd just fade away. But they forgot. I wasn't the guest at this dinner. I was the one who built the damn table. We pulled up to the restaurant in a convoy of black town cars, the kind that makes tourists stop and whisper. Charles stepped out first, one hand on his cane, the other raised in a kind of royal wave to no one in particular. Cassidy followed, her dress catching the light. Emerald green, her favorite for power plays. I climbed out last, suited, calm, quiet. Nobody said much as we rode the elevator to the rooftop. Cassidy was scrolling her phone. Charles was already rehearsing whatever speech he had planned. I stood a little off to the side, watching the floor numbers blink by, feeling the weight of my own silence. Then the doors opened. The rooftop glowed. Candlelight. Gold-rimmed glasses. String quartet already playing something soft and forgettable. The view behind the table looked like it was pulled from a postcard. The Colosseum lit up in perfect amber. 12 seats, not 13. One long, dramatic table, one neatly printed place card at each setting. I scanned the names quickly. No Daryl, no placeholder, no mistake. Cassidy took her seat without missing a beat. Charles was already halfway through a glass of Barolo. Diane smiled like a cat full of cream. Oops, Cassidy said, swirling her wine. Guess we miscounted. She didn't even look up. That's what got me. Not the missing chair, not the lack of apology, but the way she acted like I wasn't even standing there, like I was already gone. I stood for a beat. One long second, just staring at the table, the skyline, the smug little smirks hiding behind napkins. And then I said it, soft but clear. Guess I'm not family. Nobody replied. Not even a fake, "Oh no, Daryl, stay." Not one person moved to make room. Not even the waiter offered a solution. I turned and walked. No drama. No slammed doors or raised voices. Just deliberate steps toward the elevator. Down 12 stories. Out through the lobby. Across the street to a quiet little cafe with a perfect line of sight to the rooftop. I sat at a small metal table, ordered an espresso I didn't drink, and pulled out my phone. The first course had just started. I saw a server glide across the rooftop with a silver tray, bowls of something delicate and overpriced. Laughter floated down faintly. They thought they'd erased me, but I was still holding the pen. I opened Paolo's message thread. All guests seated. Should I proceed? I replied with one word. Yes. 20 minutes ticked by. I watched them toast. Watched Cassidy lean toward Preston, who had taken the seat next to her, a subtle insult dressed up like coincidence. Charles was already on his second glass of wine. Everything looked perfect, until Paolo stepped in. I recognized his walk. Composed, but urgent. Two assistants followed close behind, one holding a tablet, the other a folder. Paolo approached the head of the table and leaned toward Charles with a tight, apologetic smile. I couldn't hear it, but I knew the script. Payment in full required. Now no exceptions. Cassidy straightened up. Charles pulled out his black card. I already knew how that would go. Declined. Diane tried to offer jewelry, a bracelet. Paolo shook his head. Service stopped. I saw the ripple move down the table. Forks paused. Faces fell. Heads turned toward one another in confusion. Cassidy was checking her phone now, faster and faster, like maybe the answers were hiding in her texts. That's when I sent it. A single message. If I'm not family, I'm not funding the family. I watched her read it. Saw the exact second she realized what was happening. That the yacht wasn't coming. The villa was gone. The wine tour canceled. The birthday dinner crashing in real time. She looked up from her phone. Not at the table, but out across the street, toward me. I raised my espresso in a slow, deliberate toast. Then I smiled. For real this time. I don't know what was better. Watching Cassidy's smirk dissolve in slow motion, or watching Preston freeze mid-laugh like someone had just pulled the plug on his spotlight. From where I sat, everything played out like a perfect scene. Paolo stood calmly at the head of the table, one assistant holding the printed invoice, the other with a small payment terminal in hand. Not a single plate moved after that. The servers paused like statues. Even the string quartet tapered off, bows lifted, uncertain. Cassidy's dad went first. Charles, ever the king in his castle, pulled out his Amex like it was Excalibur. He waved it in the air, slow and confident. I could practically hear him saying, "Just run it." Denial must have hit hard. He blinked at the machine like it was broken. Tried again. Then again. By the third swipe, the assistant didn't even bother pretending anymore. She just shook her head. Cassidy's mom leaned forward next, whispering something. I saw her pull off the diamond bracelet she'd been flashing all week. Probably wanted Paolo to hold on to it, just for now. He gave her the kind of look you give someone offering monopoly money for rent. Politely declined. Professionally firm. Diane looked ready to cry. Charles looked ready to explode. And Cassidy? She was staring at her phone like it might spontaneously produce a miracle. I could tell the moment she saw my message. Her face went flat, not angry, not sad, just blank. Like her brain couldn't quite compute what was happening. Preston leaned in, said something low. She didn't answer. Forks dropped. Napkins hit plates. People stood up, confused. One of the cousins looked like he was about to argue, but then realized no one was listening. It was glorious. That's when I pulled out the envelope. Inside, hard copies of everything I'd found on Cassidy's laptop. Divorce drafts, Emails, the talking points for the toast that never happened, her flirty little messages with Preston, complete with timestamps and location data. I'd already sent digital copies to my lawyer before I ever stepped foot in that cafe. But this was for the court filing. I placed the envelope on the table next to my espresso and texted my attorney. Proceed. Everything is documented. Include the trip expenses itemized by vendor. Because here's the thing, I hadn't just canceled their week. I'd paid for it, in full, on my company's dime, and I kept every single receipt. They thought I'd roll over, thought they'd torch me quietly, move on, and spin some story about irreconcilable differences and personal growth. But now they'd have to explain the luxury trip, the unpaid vendors, the attempted public discard, and the concealed affair, all under oath. This wasn't a tantrum. This was litigation. I looked back up at the rooftop. Charles was red in the face. Cassidy was standing now, trying to talk to Paolo, waving her hands like he was the problem. Preston had vanished, probably already slinking down the back stairs. I took a final sip of espresso and stood, slipped the envelope into my jacket pocket, left a tip on the table, and walked off into the Roman night, the lights warm on my back, their panic shrinking behind me like a scene closing on stage. No dessert for them, no encore either. Just the bill and the fallout. The moment I walked away from that cafe in Rome, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree on fire. Cassidy again, Charles, her mom, blocked numbers, voicemails stacking up one after the other. I didn't listen to a single one. Instead, I sat on the edge of my hotel bed, opened my laptop, and forwarded every last message, every voicemail transcript, every screenshot to my attorney. Then I powered off the phone and tossed it in the room safe like a ticking bomb. The silence was beautiful. By the time my flight landed back in Boston, my name had been quietly removed from all the Morgan family press photos. Their social feeds went suspiciously quiet. Not even a "what a magical week" post, just a digital blackout. Like if they pretended it never happened, the embarrassment would disappear. But the panic was still there. I could feel it through the cracks. That first night back, I went to the brownstone. Didn't knock, didn't sneak. Just walked in, packed a single suitcase with my clothes, my laptop, and a couple framed photos I actually cared about. Left the gifts, the decor, the things we picked out together. Let her keep all of it. I only took what I paid for. Then I drove to Southie and checked into a furnished one-bedroom I found on short notice. Small kitchen, battered floors, loud pipes, but it was mine. No curated nonsense, no monogrammed hand towels, no lies. 2 days later, Cassidy showed up, banged on the door like she still had keys to my life. I didn't open right away. Let her stand there a minute before I cracked it just enough to see the panic on her face. Her makeup was perfect. Voice low and careful, like this was just a misunderstanding between two reasonable people. "You've embarrassed my parents in front of Rome," she said. I let the silence sit a beat before answering. "No," I said, voice even. "You embarrassed yourselves. I just gave you a mirror." She blinked, jaw tight. "You humiliated us." I stepped out fully, shut the door behind me, and crossed my arms. Was it the unpaid dinner, the missing yacht, or the part where I didn't fund your breakup speech? Her face twisted. "You're acting like a child." "No," I said. "I'm acting like someone who finally stopped paying to be disrespected." She tried to pivot, soften, plead, said she didn't mean for things to go this way, that maybe we should talk, without lawyers. But I could see it all now. Every word was just another version of the same play. Soft voice, guilt trip, redirect the blame. I wasn't buying it anymore. She left after 10 minutes, frustrated and fake smiling like she still had an audience somewhere. That night, I got one last text. From her mom. "This proves what we always knew. You don't belong." I stared at that message for a long time. Didn't reply. Just blocked the number and let the words sit. Then I poured myself a drink, sat by the window, and watched the headlights roll past on the wet Southie pavement. They thought I'd beg to stay, that I'd apologize, grovel, maybe even try to patch it up for appearance's sake. Instead, I burned the bridge and built my own damn road, and that would have been the end of it, if not for the press. 3 days later, a friend texted me a link. Boston's power couple implodes in Rome. What happened at Charles Morgan's $300,000 birthday dinner? Apparently, someone on the restaurant staff had leaked a few details. A couple vendors, too. Nothing from me. Not yet, anyway. But the story was out there. And it wasn't about me. It was about them. The image they worked so hard to maintain, cracked. And I hadn't said a single word. Not yet. It started as a whisper. A couple finance blogs posting vague lines about a Beacon Hill fund showing liquidity strain. But by the time October hit, the whisper had turned into a full-volume headline. Morgan and Tate facing investigation over. Foreign holdings, misreported assets. I didn't leak anything. Didn't need to. Enough vendors, service partners, and restaurant staff had been stiffed or strung along during that Roman circus that the gossip was bound to reach someone who knew how to dig. Clients began to pull out. One major pension fund froze their accounts. A museum quietly removed Charles Morgan's name from its donor wall. A university board restructured their advisory circle, which just so happened to no longer include Diane Morgan. Their house on Mount Vernon went from power address to polite liability. Invitations dried up. No more photo spreads in Boston Common magazine. No more appearances at waterfront galas. The Morgans, once untouchable, were now just another broken dynasty trying to polish the tarnish. Cassidy, of course, moved on with astonishing speed. She married Preston 6 months after the Rome disaster. Big, elegant wedding in Newport, complete with a drone video and a glowing write-up in some half-bought lifestyle site. Said they reconnected after life's timing brought them full circle. The kid showed up 5 weeks later. I did the math like everyone else. She didn't even bother hiding it. Meanwhile, I just kept showing up to work. Whitman Logistics didn't explode overnight, but we grew steadily. New clients came in, a couple big names who'd heard about what happened and, to my surprise, respected it. One CFO said it to my face during a kickoff call. "You didn't go nuclear. You just unplugged the power." And that stuck with me. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't threatened. I hadn't slashed tires or lit social media on fire. I'd simply taken back what was mine and left the lights off behind me. That approach worked better than I could have imagined. We landed 3 new accounts that winter, hired more staff, moved into a larger office space in Fort Point. I started sleeping again, started breathing deeper, started walking into rooms without wondering who thought I didn't belong there. Then one afternoon, around mid-June, I got an envelope at the office. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Neat cursive, too formal to be real. Cassidy. Inside was an invitation to Charles Morgan's 76th birthday party. Held in Boston this time, some new art gallery in the seaport. Classy, contained, probably cheaper. There was no note, just a printed invite with my name, spelled correctly for once, and an RSVP number. I sat at my desk staring at it, almost laughing. Not because they wanted me back. They didn't. But because they thought this invite made them look gracious. Like they were above it all. Like we were still pretending. I didn't call, didn't text. I sent a response. A fruit basket. One of the really high-end ones. Imported pears, aged cheddar, a bottle of red from the same vineyard I'd booked in Frascati. Attached was a card. Wishing Charles continued health and clear ledgers. Daryl. Underneath it, tucked in the straw, was my lawyer's business card. Not because I wanted to make a scene, but because I wanted them to know I hadn't forgotten. And I sure as hell hadn't forgiven. Let them chew on that with their overpriced crackers. I had better places to be. A year later, almost to the day, I stood on a different rooftop, this one in Florence. The air was cooler here than Rome. Less pretentious, more grounded. The kind of place where things age well and people mind their own business. I liked that. I leaned on the railing, espresso in hand, watching the lights spill across the terracotta roofs like gold dust. Somewhere behind me, the AV team was running final checks on the stage setup. Banners were going up. The guest list had already hit 200. Boston's largest supply chain conglomerate had flown in 40 execs and trusted me to run the whole event. 3 nights of industry panels, networking dinners, and a keynote address on global freight resilience. Mine. No borrowed name, no borrowed seat. Just me. I didn't think about the Morgans much anymore. Not in the bitter, obsessive way I used to. These days, they were more like a scar you forget you have until someone points it out. But sometimes, in quiet moments like this, I remembered that night in Rome, the way it felt standing there without a chair, the way the air shifted when I realized I'd never been welcome to begin with. And now here I was. No one could take my seat because I built the whole damn table. I took a sip of espresso and smiled. My assistant walked over with the updated itinerary. They confirmed the mayor's office is sending a rep for the closing dinner, she said. Also, the Italian freight minister is expected to drop in for the keynote. Good, I said. Make sure he gets a front row seat. I scanned the guest list again. Clean, balanced. Every name had a purpose, every seat accounted for. No placeholders, no ghosts. After she left, I stayed at the railing a little longer, letting the breeze move through my jacket. Below, the city moved like it always had. Steady, unbothered, old and honest. And I thought, this is what peace feels like. Not revenge, not vindication, just peace. Because the best revenge wasn't watching their dinner fall apart, or hearing about their lawsuits, or knowing Cassidy ended up with a man who'd always been her second choice. The best revenge was this. Waking up every day with my name on the door, planning events that ran like clockwork, working with people who valued what I brought to the table, and made damn sure I had a seat at it. Or better yet, letting me build it myself.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.